So we get to start our Brands Hatch Caterham race weekend here with the Caterham 7 Championship UK, the official British Championship of Caterham Racing. Paul Woodman is with me. These are the guys that are going to put on the fastest and most exciting show this weekend.
And they also had the most difficult decision because it's been wet and dry, and of course they got slicks to choose from as well. So I know a lot of them have been panicking in the pit lane, but or in the paddock, but slicks everywhere by the look of things.
Yeah, I actually had a couple of mechanics as they were passing me to come to the holding area saying, "Slicks, are you sure? What do you reckon? Do you reckon we can go slicks?"
I think we're good. And what a lovely tribute that was as well to Robert as well. But this is going to be exciting stuff, and I think everybody's up for it, including all the marshals and all the spectators, and I think the whole community is really embraced today, of all days especially.
Yeah, the battle is definitely going to be very exciting from the outset. So over to our race commentator, Scott Woodwis, to talk you through the action from this first of two races here this weekend in the Caterham 7 Championship UK.
Thank you, Jake and Paul. Yes, getting set for racing to get underway here for the first of our 5 Caterham Championships, and this is the top level Caterham 7 Championship UK. These are the fastest Caterhams, and albeit the fastest cars that you'll see all weekend. These are the top 420R models, which are also running for the first time this year. Uprated suspension, as well as a dedicated Avon slick and wet tyre, and increased rev limit for 2021, making them pretty much the fastest Caterhams that we've ever had. And with it holding national status, that means that whoever wins the championship becomes, for only the second time in Caterham history, the official British Caterham champion. That happened last year with John Byrne, who almost ran away with the entire season. Only one race he didn't win, which went to the hands of Henry Heaton, one of the drivers here this weekend. And for the crop of 2021 drivers, the battle is certainly getting quite exciting as we move forward in the championship. We've had 3 meetings already so far. We've started off the season way back at Donington Park in May. We then moved forwards to Knockhill in Scotland, and then most recently the drivers have been out racing on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, where they had lots of mixed conditions. One day it was dry, the other it was absolutely teeming it down with rain. And given the weather conditions that we've got here this weekend, we might well get a little bit of both as the season goes on. So looking at where they come into in terms of the championship points, it is Stephen Nuttall who leads the way on 210 from Henry Heaton on 195, followed by Gordon Sawyer on 185. Then Chris Hutchinson, who's been a beacon of consistency today and has one of his best starting spots, which we'll get to in a second. He's 4th in points. James Murphy, who is ever a rocket in any Caterham you put him into, is 5th ahead of Will Smith. Neil Fraser, Johnny Jarrett. Caterham CEO Graham McDonald is 9th, and Greg Monks rounds out the top 10. So the cars have been already brought round to the grid, as per it was for the tribute to Robert, and they'll be getting themselves set and ready to go very shortly. We had an interesting Super Pole session for those who are new to the championship. It is Super Pole means that whoever was the top 5 in qualifying then go through to a single lap shootout, and whoever sets the fastest time gets 3 bonus points and pole position for the first race. It's then 2 points for second fastest in Super Pole and a single bonus point for third, and that session then sets the top 5 for the grid, and everyone else is set by where they qualified for the first race. So we can give you a run through of the grid, and as per, of course, the top 5 being set by that Super Pole session, it's Gordon Sawyer who takes pole position, and therefore those 3 bonus points. But there was rain towards the end of the session where it got heavier for the last 2 cars, and therefore it did affect their lap time somewhat. But Gordon Sawyer is one of the lucky ones to get out there before the rain intensified. So Gordon will start on pole position in car number 91, but alongside him on the front row of the grid is car number 78, Chris Hutchinson, who's no stranger to Caterham racing, but he is competing in the 7 UK Championship for the first time this year. He took 2 years off, a year's sabbatical, and then another year's enforced sabbatical due to the COVID pandemic. But he's back on the track this year, and he's made some steady progress in that number 78 car, the green car that's on the outside of the front row of the grid. So he'll be pleased to start from the front row. The second row of the grid is number 27, William Smith, a former Caterham champion himself from a few seasons ago. Alongside him, with one of his best qualifying results today, is Alex Jordan, the pink and blue machine, on the second row of the grid on the outside row. Then it's the third row of the grid. We see Chris Aubrey alongside James Murphy, who is the fastest of the non-top 5 drivers who didn't make it through to Super Pole. James will want to try and benefit from P6, given the fact that he is ahead of quite a few of his rivals in that respect. Row 4 is where we find our championship leader, Stephen Nuttall, not really enjoying the mixed conditions out there this morning. He will start from 7th on the grid in car number 46. Alongside him is Jake Swan-Dixon in car number 66 to round out the 4th row of the grid. Then it's Caterham CEO Graham McDonald, who will start 9th in car number 19, followed by car 10 in position 10, that being Henry Heaton, and they round out the top 10 runners. And then it's Neil Fraser in car number 25 alongside Rob Watts on the 6th row of the grid, and Tom Eden and Johnny Jarrett, who round out the 14 car entry for our Caterham Caterham 7 Championship UK entrance. So Brands Hatch here this weekend, of course, we're using the short but tight and exciting 1.2 mile Indy circuit. It really is one of the speed bowls of European motorsport, and it is a circuit where there isn't really a place that isn't classified an overtaking opportunity, both either inside or outside. So expect overtaking opportunities pretty much everywhere you look. Now, we had a fairly wet qualifying session. It wasn't torrential rain, and the track wasn't completely sodden, but there was enough rain to make sure that all the drivers had to go out there on rain tyres, plus not just in the main qualifying session, but in Super Pole as well. Since then, because the ambient temperatures are quite warm, it's around about 19 degrees out there, there is overhanging cloud, but the rain has stopped, and the circuit is pretty much as dry as it was. So I think most drivers might possibly, I would consider maybe they might even get a second green flag lap to get adapted to the dry conditions, given that pretty much everyone was out there on wet. So it's a change of tyres. They will have to obviously go out there to adapt to the conditions much better. I'm just going to look outside my commentary box window to see if they are going to allow them to have a second green flag lap, or they're just going to bring them back round to the grid. Now, Gordon Sawyer leading the way, of course, in the black and yellow number 91. And the green car, which is Chris Hutchison, will start on the front row alongside him. They are going to bring them through for a... no, it will just be one single lap to the grid. So I thought with the change of conditions there might well be a second lap, but there might still be a little bit of dampness on the circuit in order to possibly make it a little bit tricky. As Jake said, there were some teams who were possibly looking at the skies and thinking whether or not we were going to have a rain shower, but we are due to have some rain all the way throughout the day in bursts, so watch out for that. The thing you've got to watch out for, of course, is those championship contenders. Stephen Nuttall's back in 7th, you've got Henry Heaton back in 10th, and then you've got Gordon Sawyer, who is on pole position and has the best possible chance to get himself some points if these two have trouble getting through the traffic. So, all set for the first race of the weekend. The 5-second board is up then. The Caterham 7 Championship UK here at Brands Hatch. Race number 1 here on the Saturday on the Indy circuit. Sawyer and Hutchison on the front row of the grid. We're underway in racing. Strong start for the front row and a great start for the second. William Smith, he tries to pick his way through the middle down towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, but Sawyer leads, and it is Smith around the outside for second place. Hutchins on the outside for third, but he's under pressure for Alex Jordan in fourth position, and then 5th and 6th we've got James Murphy looking down the outside of Stephen Nuttall. So Nuttall's already up 2 spots to 5th of where he started. They're side by side for the lead and for third Exton Druids down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend for the first time. So Sawyer leads then, William Smith in second place, and Chris Hutchison going straight to the middle of the road. He knows he has to defend from absolutely everybody, heading through the left-hander, down the bottom of the hill, and up through 30 for the first time. They shoot through shots and up through now the uphill. Running wide there was Alex Jordan in the number 80 machine. He's now under threat from the 77 of Rob Watts. So he's dropped a couple of places. But Rob Watts has made a cracking start. He's up inside the top 10 now, where he started back in 12th. So the leaders haven't wasted time to get up towards the front. It's already then Sawyer that leads the way. Smith in second place, darts to the outside line. That you can pass on the outside, and he is going to go the high, wide and handsome route into Paddock Hill Bend. Down the hill he goes. Has to slot back in to try and get the undercut on the run up towards Druids. It's still third place for Hutchinson, but he's under threat now from James Murphy, who breaks deep on the outside line to try and make the move on the former Supersport champion back in 2018. Now they come back into Graham Hill Bend. Fast start also for Stephen Nutt in the 5th position. And Henry Heaton, remember he starts in 6th position. He's already onto the back of his main championship rival, Stephen Nuttall. They're going to go side by side into the left-hander at Surtees. And they bounce over the curbs and the bumps in the road. They come up through McLaren, in through clearways at the top of the circuit, and all the way through this long, never-ending Clark corner that takes them back onto the Jack Brabham straight to end the second lap. Down the pit straight, side by side for the leader for third place, and possibly for 5th as well. Also there we see, looks like the 77 Rob Watts is battling with Jake Swan-Dixon, but look at them, they're 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 for 1st, 3rd, 5th and 7th. Undercut for William Smith up the inside on the approach towards Druids, and here comes James Murphy behind him in car number 3. They're side by side. Murphy sees the opportunity, sneaks up the inside of his teammate and says, all right Gordon, fancy if I get through. He tries to get past, has to sit back into 3rd place. It's only been, what, lap 3, and we're already having plenty of action going on at the front. This is fantastic stuff. So down the back straight, towards Surtees again, and the entire pack staying as one as they turn in towards the back of it there. I think that was, double check who that was. I think it was Neil Fraser at the back of the train, so he's trying to move his way through. So Chris Hutch trying to stay in the pack here. He's still 4th position, but under big pressure from Henry Heaton to come down the pit straight. The green car and the turquoise machine car number 10, and Heaton looks at the outside line. The first proper flying lap wasn't the fast lap, has gone incredibly to Caterham CEO Greg McDonald, who is back in 9th place, but surely must be benefiting from the tow from all the cars in front of him to get that extra straight line speed on the approach to Paddock Hill Bend. nudge there in the rear for Henry Heaton. Just a reminder that I'm still here, Chris. I haven't run away so far. But now the top five's trying to get away here for the rest of the pack. What's intriguing, Stephen Nuttall hasn't been able to get any further than where he started back in 7th position. He's gone up 1 spot to 6th, but he hasn't made up any more spaces. There we see Tom Eden going up the inside of Johnny Jarrett into Surtees. That move didn't come off, and Johnny maintains the position. They turn their way out of Clark Curve again, and this time with Henry Heaton, he's got himself in front, but Chris Hutchinson will put himself back alongside, puts 2 wheels onto the grass. He holds onto the place, but now here comes Stephen Nuttall with the slingshot, looking to the outside into Paddock Hill Bend. That's going to be another position taken. Oh, that's Graham McDonald out of shape, into Paddock Hill Bend, off into the gravel. He had a big tank snapper on, he managed to try and catch it, but I'm afraid the gravel trap has caught him, thankfully before the tyre wall. And I wonder, is that possibly going to be an early safety car here in this first race of the weekend? Unless there's going to be a live snatch to be able to pull him backwards towards the tyre wall in a safer position. So, bad fortunes for Graham McDonald, the Caterham CEO. He's had a little bit of bad luck throughout this season in the 7 Championship UK. There goes Tom Eden again up the inside of Johnny Jarrett into Surtees, but that doesn't work. So, I'm afraid Graham McDonald is out of the race at this early stage now. So that hasn't really worked out for him so far. The pit straight they go again. It's towards the pit straight up towards Paddock Hill Bend, but they will find when they get there will be safety car flags and boards are out. So the safety car has already been deployed in this early stage of the race. So Graham McDonald's retirement up at Paddock Hill Bend means that he, I'm afraid, will take no further part, and that means that the first appearance in its official capacity of the RunYourFleet.com Jaguar XF Sport Brake safety car is being required. And so Tim Glover at the wheel with Peter Skilleto as his observer will be heading out there. They've just left their post on the exit of Graham Hill Bend and pick them up as they come towards Surtees. So there is Graham McDonald's stricken car. As we say, thankfully the gravel managed to catch him before he got anywhere near the barriers, but that must have been a really hairy moment for Graham, that car getting that loose under brakes. And on the slicks, they have so much grip that if he tried to counter steer, it will just simply snap the other way. And thankfully the drivers around him were alert enough to see him coming and see the path of where that car was going, and thankfully keep out of his way. So we've got a bit of time to take stock here. These are 20-minute races in the Caterham 7 Championship UK. Already about 5.5 minutes into our first one. It's William Smith who leads the way after he started on the second row of the grid. Gordon Sawyer from pole is up to 2nd position. James Murphy is now 3rd. Henry Heaton from 10th on the grid is now up to 4th. It's an incredible drive so far. If he can win this from 4th, I'll be incredibly impressed. That'll be one of the drives of the weekend already. 5th for Stephen Nuttall. 6th for front row man Chris Hutchinson. Then it's Rob Watts, Jake Swan-Dixon, Alex Jordan, who started back on the 2nd row. He's tumbled down to 9th. And Chris Aubrey rounds out the top 10 from Johnny Jarrett in 11th, Tom Eden in 12th. And it's then Neil Fraser who rounds out the 13 cars that we still have, with, of course, Graham McDonald's number 19 machine deep in the gravel at Paddock Hill Bend. So they all form up behind the Jaguar safety car. And they make their way around at the reduced speed. So it's going to give a bit more information, I think, on the Caterham 7, this 7 UK car. So if you've watched the top level of Caterham racing before, you'll know that these are Caterham 420Rs. But compared to the previous season, we've had a few upgrades, as I mentioned at the start of before the start of the race, which is that these cars have had the biggest changes have been 2 things, which is dedicated Avon slicks and wets. When before they ran, I think it was an Avon ZZR or ZZS tyre, which is very much a semi-slick tyre, whereas these are full slicks these cars run on in these dry conditions. Also in the wets that they had in qualifying this morning, it would be a full dedicated Avon wet tyre for these cars. They also have uprated Bilstein springs and dampers, which means that they have uprated suspension, which means they can cope with better cornering speeds and they can lap much faster. They also have an increased rev limit of a few hundred RPM, just to make sure that the cars, when they're in the slipstream, that they're not hitting the rev limiter and they're not essentially topping out at the speed. And therefore it means you've got more chance for these cars to use a bit more horsepower, a bit more revs to try and pull them themselves apart when they're overtaking. And that means not only is it faster racing, some of the fastest Caterham racing we've ever had, but it also makes for closer racing, because it means the overtaking is much easier and much simpler, because in a polite way, these Caterhams are not the most aerodynamic things. You can look at the front of them with the sort of blunt, almost rounded, sort of stubby front end of these cars, and they do punch quite a large hole in the air. But because they do that, because they're rather un-aerodynamic, because they do punch that massive hole, it does mean that the cars following behind get a huge tow from behind, and that's why you get so many trains of Caterhams all together in races from start to finish. And usually what will happen is if you have a train of 2 or 3 cars, they'll start to battle, and the more they start to battle, the more it benefits the cars behind. So another train of cars will form on to make it a 6-car train for, let's say, the lead. Then another couple of cars will tack on, then another 2, and another couple, and before you know it, you've got, in this case, you'll have almost the whole field in contention for at least a strong podium or top 5 finish. So that's what makes Caterham racing so exciting, and that's why some of these upgrades for these cars have been absolutely vindicated and justified so far. The racing with this Caterham 7 Championship UK has been absolutely superb, and many of these drivers are very experienced in terms of having raced in Caterham levels from the academy all the way through up to previously 310Rs and then the 7 UK Championship. Some have been in the 7 Championship UK for a couple of seasons, like Stephen Nuttall, like Henry Heaton. Some have come back, like William Smith, up into the upper ranks. So have the likes of Chris Hutchison's made a return. Alex Jordan's come back since the last couple of rounds. And then you've got those who have moved up from lower steps in the past couple of seasons. So you've got Gordon Sawyer, who's moved up last year. You've got James Murphy, who's up there for the first time after he's been making his way steadily up through the ranks. He was in 310R in the championship fight last year. He's now in 7 UK. He has a race win to his name already this year as well. And then you look at other drivers that have also moved up the ranks, particularly also Greg McDonald, who is sadly out of this race, but he's gone through the entire Caterham Motorsport rankings of going up, starting in the academy, then going through Road Sport, then 270, then 310, and then into the 7 Championship UK. And what that will be for him is not just him to fulfill his racing ambitions, but also it's a great way for him to experience what his customers experience, because being the CEO, he has a greater understanding of the product, he has a greater understanding of how his customers race, what they want, and what they prefer in their racing activities. And therefore it means that Caterham can go back, and if they have to make any designs and any changes, he's at least got the knowledge, as have others like Simon Lambert, who's raced before, and David Ridley and others within Caterham's outlook in the motorsport sector, who have raced themselves, and they have an understanding of what it is and what Caterham racers enjoy and what they want out of a championship, what they want out of a setup, and therefore they can deliver that in the best way possible. So, we're just past the halfway stage in this first race of the weekend, the Caterham 7 Championship UK. Still the safety car heads down the back straight. The headlights haven't gone off as far as I can see just yet. So we're still just recovering Graham's car. It's just being collected behind the barriers by the snatch vehicle. So thanks again to our fantastic recovery teams and marshals, of course, once again, for their great efforts. And I wonder, no, they're going to go for another lap, I think, because to switch it off now will be quite a rude awakening for everyone in the train. So I think they're going to put them around one more time to allow them to properly sight themselves up for this restart. So cars to watch, of course, are going to be, I think, primarily Henry Heaton from 4th, because remember, he started back in the 5th row of the grid in 10th, not where he would usually find himself, but now he's going to have a great chance of possibly picking himself up into at least a podium place. Given how close the racing's been and exciting the racing's been already, I think he's got a really good chance. Also watch for Stephen Nuttall. He's the black car just going after this bottom shot. 46. This is Stephen Nuttall, who I remember someone referring him to as the, it's quite amusing, the Roger Federer of Caterham racing. Why was he called that? Because at the moment he's won a title in, at the moment, all 4 of the first 4 steps on the Caterham Motorsport ladder, that being Academy, then Road Sport, then the equivalent of 270 and 310R over the years. But the last few seasons he's been competing in this Caterham 7 Championship UK, and previously before when it was called the 7420R Championship, because he really wants that 5th title to complete the set. And he does come into the weekend, as we mentioned at the top of the beginning of the race, he does come into the weekend with a 15-point lead, so there's certainly a chance for him to do that this year. He has got some very feisty competition that we're trying to hunt him down. So, lights are out on the runyourfleets.com Jaguar XF Sport Brake safety car, which means that Will Smith gets the chance to become the safety car himself. He will decide when he wants to pull the pin, put his foot down and get the race back underway. he will know that the drivers behind, like Sawyer, Murphy, Heaton, Nuttall and Co, are all going to be looking to see when he puts the throttle down, which he's going for now. They make the sprint out of Clark Curve onto the pit straight. The green flags will fly, and with 7.5 minutes to go, we're back underway in the Caterham 7 Championship UK at Brands Hatch. Speed leads them down towards Paddock Hill Bend. Sawyer in second place. There's Murphy third, Heaton fourth, and already challenging for fifth position, under threat for fifth, is Stephen Nuttall from Chris Hutchison. A good restart from Chris. He's trying to get himself back into the top 5 as they come towards the beginning of racing once again. James Murphy was Henry Heaton all over him as they come out of the hairpin at Druids. On the way back down towards Graham Hill Bend at racing speeds. There's the fight on for third and fourth. So gap starting to form. Sawyer's gone with Smith at the restart. And Murphy's trying to go with them and bring Henry Heaton with him. Big slide there from James Murphy. I imagine that there might still be a little bit of temperature to find in those slick tyres because they have been under the safety car, but as much weaving as they do, sometimes it doesn't get all the temperature back. So to get back into racing speed, that will start to really help out. Gordon's Stephen Nuttall's all the way from Hutchison. So here comes Henry Heaton, making him a dive to the outside. Tries to make the undercut on the switch back through Paddock Hill Bend. Now the charge up the hill. Just trying to peek. Try and get around the inside line, try to outbrake James Murphy into the hairpin. What this has also done, look, is the fact these two are scrapping at the front. Will Smith and Gordon Sawyer, they have now brought both James Murphy and Henry Heaton into play here. It's been a change for sixth position, I noticed, because Chris Hutchison has lost out to Rob Watts as they come through. Yes, he has. There's Rob Watts in the grey and fluorescent yellow Caterham in sixth position now, ahead of the green car of Chris Hutchison. But we've now got a quartet battle with the leaders. Henry Heaton gets all up over the curves on the inside of Clearways. Flat out through Clark Curve. Hug the pits, the inside of the pit straight. Here comes Murphy. He's in the slipstream of his DPR Motorsport teammate. But the best way to defend for Sawyer is to try and attack Will Smith into paddock. Coming up to 5.5 minutes left. We're on to lap 13 here in this first Caterham 7 Championship UK race. Still William Smith hanging on as they come back into the hairpin at Druids. But look, as I mentioned, the more these cars in front battle, the more it brings the other cars behind into the fight, and it keeps on growing the train. We had a top 2, it's now become a top 4, it's now becoming a top 6 or even a top 8, because you've now got Stephen Nuttall, Rob Watts, and then Chris Hutchison, who's bringing Jake Swan-Dixon with him. It's a top 8 going for the podium places as they turn in through Surtees, up through McLaren, and into Clearways now for the 13th time. They're all over each other as they turn in onto the pit straight once again. And now the charge down towards Paddock once more, past the pit straight. Look at Henry Heaton riding up the black and orange car, number 3, James Murphy. There goes Rob Watts under threat from Chris Hutchison. And look at that, there's rain on the camera. In fact, there's a big rain shower coming, and this is going to be very tricky because they're all out there on slicks. If it starts to be an absolute deluge, this really could be tricky out there. It could be survival of who can stay on track in these slippery conditions. Up the inside there, that was a failed move for Gordon Sawyer. Now playing to his advantage, James Murphy. He looks down the outside into Graham Hill Bend, but Sawyer defends neatly. And look at the way Henry Heaton's trying to get the traction off the corner. He's got a really good exit from Graham Hill Bend. Looks to the outside. Side by side for third, turning into Surtees. The rain continuing to stop to just spit a little bit here, but they're still side by side, and James Murphy slides a little wide. He's getting very greasy out there already. They're starting to run wide off line. Stephen Nuttall runs deep into Clearways. That will give Rob Watts a chance to get through into 5th position. Will Smith is trying to pull away here as Henry Heaton goes for the attack. He's past one Caterham on one DPR Caterham, one lap. He's going for a second here, but the conditions could be treacherous down towards Paddock Hill Bend. He goes for it. Sawyer holds to the inside line, but is he going to get the run back on the exit of the corner? Yes, he is. He put himself level. What a slingshot from Henry Heaton up the hill towards Druids in these ever slightly slick and slippery conditions. Wheel to wheel through Druids. They almost touch, but into second place goes Henry Heaton from 10th on the grid. Now in these conditions now with 3.5 minutes still to go, is there a possibility that Henry Heaton could even catch and maybe even pass William Smith for the lead? It's definitely possible. He's got time to do it. Change on for 5th up the inside there. That was Rob Watts. Around the outside of both of them looks to be Jake Swan-Dixon. Swan-Dixon in the white Caterham with the blue roll cage, number 66. He's got past Rob Watts. He's flying out there. He's someone who, well, amongst other things, does powerboat racing, so he'd be used to wet conditions. So he's trying to get himself into 5th position at the expense of the championship leader, who is losing touch to the top 4 with 3.25 minutes to go. Back into Paddock Hill Bend. Still, it's starting to drizzle out there a little bit, but it's quite warm out there, so if it does stop raining, the track might dry pretty quickly. There's a bit of a breeze out there too, so that might help as well. Back to Druids. Look at the way they're all closing up. It's almost like a stock car race rather than a a Caterham race here, in the sense that they're all bunched up together in one big pack. Now he's going to chase on for 5th and 6th, and James Murphy didn't get a very good exit from Graham Hill-Ben. He's lost out to Gordon Sawyer, and is now under big pressure from Stephen Nuttall as they turn their way back through Surtees. Wide in the background over the curb there was Johnny Jarrett in the 21. But 2.5 minutes to go. And Henry Heaton's lap times, he's lapping quicker. Oh, into the gravel is James Murphy. Murphy runs wide, he's into the gravel and drops right to the tail of the field. That is gutting, he's outside the top 10. That will be one of his faults. He might have to rely on drop scores later. But not a great move there for James Murphy. He must have just slivered off in these ever-increasingly tricky conditions. 2 minutes to go. Back up towards Druids again. This is lap 17 here at Brands Hatch on the Indy circuit. And Henry Heaton has not only just been catching, he's caught William Smith, and he was quicker by 1/10 of a second. But now he's in the slipstream. There's a really good chance here that he'll start to catch him. Now, what's incredible is that Henry Heaton, and I hope his other half won't mind me saying this, but he had an incident at Silverstone which actually forced him to it caused him to partially dislocate his shoulder. So he's able to get it back into position here this weekend. But this really is a fighting drive from Henry to get himself back on form here, and he needs this to try and claw points back on Gordon Stephen Nuttall, who is back in 4th position. He's behind his teammate Gordon Sawyer as they come back down towards Paddock Hill Ben with 1.5 minutes to go. And he needs to try and score every single point he can ahead of Stephen Nuttall. I should remind you as well, Henry Heaton runs as an independent team, basically a family-run team with just himself and a few family members and friends, whereas Stephen Nuttall, of course, runs as part of the mighty DPR Motorsport outfit, which runs several cars, not just in the 7 Championship UK Series, but also in lower Caterham ranks where team support's allowed. So it really is, in terms of the team setup, David versus Goliath. At the moment, David's winning. Less than a minute to go. I think we're going to get one more time around this time by. And Heaton must know then, if he gets the last lap board, it will be now or never to try and get himself past William Smith. We could be setting up for a classic Caterham grandstand finish. But if Heaton can get past him before the checker flag, that will certainly help him. On to the last lap they go. Looks to the outside. Side by side across the line. Down towards Paddock Hill Ben. Heaton on the outside. Smith on the inside. Smith breaks a little bit deeper. He'll try and get the undercut on the exit. Heaton is all over the rear of Smith's car as they head up Halewood Hill, back towards Druids for the final time. There's about 20 seconds left on the clock as Heaton looks at the wider line. Behind him, it's all action stations. There goes Rob Watts up the inside of Jake Swan-Dixon. Up at the 5th position. They're still side by side, and there's contact behind. Round goes Rob Watts. He gets tapped by Jake Swan-Dixon. Everyone else checked up behind him, but that's Rob Watts out of contention. He's off onto the wet grass, and he will be going, in fact, no further. I'm afraid he will not see the flag. So drama at the end as they come back towards the final couple of the corners. But here's Henry Heaton. He's looking to the outside line. He runs a little bit wide. He tries to get the slingshot onto the pit straight for the final time. It will be a sprint to the line. Is he going to be too far back, or would it be a photo finish? Up to the checkered flag. Heaton's pushed him as hard as he can, but it's not going to be enough. William Smith holds on to win the first Caterham 7 Championship UK race of the weekend here at Brands Hatch. Henry Heaton from 10th on the grid finishes 2nd, less than 2/10 back. And Gordon Sawyer finishes 3rd, 1.2 seconds back, just ahead of Stephen Nuttall in 4th. And Chris Aubrey, after that contact between Rob Watts and Jake Swan-Dixon, picks up the final top 5 space. It's then Jake Swan-Dixon 6th, Chris Hutchison survives to 7th, then Johnny Jarrett, Tom Eden and James Murphy after his trip in the gravel rounds out the top 10. Then it's Jordan and Fraser and Rob Watts coming into the pit lane. And we lost Graham McDonald early on, which caused the safety car. Woo, goodness me, what a fantastic first race to kick things off here at Brands Hatch, and a fantastic by all involved. Unfortunately, we did have the contact at the end between Swan-Dixon and Watts, which is never something you like to see, but mega racing from all involved. And I'm sure, hopefully, that's racing like that will inspire more drivers to get involved. Here's provisional confirmation of the result then. William Smith wins the first race of the weekend for the Caterham 7 Championship UK, just under 2/10 ahead of Henry Heaton, who put in a stellar drive from 10th up to 2nd place. It's 3rd for Gordon Sawyer, who rounds off the podium ahead of Stephen Nuttall, and then Chris Aubrey in 4th and Jake Swan-Dixon in 6th. And it's Hutchison, Jarrett, Eden and Murphy rounding out the top 10, with Jordan and Fraser being the final 2 finishers. And then it's Rob Watts, who sadly retired on the last lap, and Graham McDonald, who retired in the early stages.